So everyone, thanks very much for joining us. I'm glad Jordan was able to join us today. We've definitely got a good 30 minutes ahead of us. Just a couple quick housekeeping things. One, this is being recorded. The replay will be available in a couple of days. And we're not going to be taking questions during this, but if you have a question for me or Jordan, please leave it. There's a section below the video window here, and we'll do our best afterwards to get back to you. So Jordan, great to have you with us today. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for letting me join. I enjoy these.
All right, so let's get right to it. So you and I speak about monthly, and we have some really good conversations about data literacy. And those tend to be mostly more about strategy. So I'd like to get a little bit more into the tactical side of things that maybe you're doing with customers. So when you have when you're helping a customer start their data literacy program, what's one thing you look out for that you want to make sure it doesn't derail a project quickly? And what do you do to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because the key with a project or an initiative of this type of magnitude and size, they can get derailed pretty quickly if you don't have the right support and the right people in place. So that's the first thing I look for, or anybody should look for, is do you have leadership buy-in? And if you have leadership buy-in, then the initiative can run. Then you're able to put things forward, you're able to discuss, you're looking at investment dollars, making sure you have the right people in place to lead the program. But if you don't have a leadership buy-in and all of a sudden leadership finds out a big project is going, and a lot of times that's not going to end well. So first and foremost, I'm looking for that leadership buy-in. And then second, I'm looking at who is going to lead the initiative. I do like having pretty much one point person. I'm fine if they have committees and teams and things like that in place, but we're really looking for one person pinpointing and being able to lead the project and the program from the get-go. So leadership buy-in, and then who do you have to lead it? Because the learning plans, the technical side of it, that's pretty straightforward, but we need those people to be able to lead the program.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's dig into that a little bit more. So, because leadership, that word buy-in can mean a lot of things. So what are some of are you looking for things like that they, as you said, just that they know about it and they say, okay? Are you looking for them to participate in a certain way? What does that mean to you?
Both of those. First off, I want them to not only be aware of it, but to agree with it. And those are two different things. People can be aware of something and give you permission to do it, but not really understand what it is. And this happened, if you actually look at your career quite a bit, that's probably what you're finding, is that people they're giving you permission to do something, they're aware of it, but do they truly know what's happening? So I actually want leadership to buy in the sense that they know what it is and that they agree that this is something the organization needs. Because if they do that, there's going to be more enthusiasm. There's going to be more effort, if you will, to ensure what they're doing is working. So that's what I would say by buy-in and awareness, is that they should actually believe in what you're doing, agree with it, understand it. And then secondly, yeah, I mean, leadership, absolutely. We have statistics out there that show, the executive suite, only 1 out of 3 of them are confident in their data literacy skills. Decision makers, it's 1 out of 4. They absolutely should be participating, especially if these are the people driving strategy for the company. They're the ones pulling the trigger on investment dollars. So they definitely should participate. I've got one company I'm working with right now who part of the program they purchased from me was to do big executive workshops, making sure the executives not only are aware, but they know what's happening, why it's happening, how to support it, etc.
So so that makes sense. So let's take a scenario, because we're talking about how to make sure a project doesn't get derailed. So you go into a project, you're talking to the team leader, not necessarily some executive, and you're talking about this with them, and they say, well, kind of. They kind of buy in. What does somebody need to do in that situation to go to that executive and really make sure that they're on board with what's going on and really understand it? What are the kinds of things you see them maybe disagree with or challenge? And then how do you what are the things that we can do to overcome that and deal and address those issues?
It's a good question, and it's actually one of the most frequent questions I get. Basically, how in the world do you do what you just described? So the first thing I do with any company when it comes to a data literacy, anything pretty much, is awareness. And it's doing workshops. It's sitting down with them and showing them the why, the what, and the how, and making sure people get that. In fact, if you look at my calendar, if you were to look at my emails, I got another request just this morning. Jordan, X, Y, and Z company is interested in data literacy. Can you do your data literacy workshop? And then we find time, we set it up, and we put it together. So people will ask me, how do you get started? Our company has no clue what they're doing. We don't even know if they believe in this, and our executives, and so on and so forth. It's the same question. I say, let's start with some awareness campaigns. Let's put together some time to sit down, do some workshops, showing what data literacy is, why it matters, showing what benefits the organization will get from it, showing them the steps that need to be taken to do this. And then when you do that, solutions are much easier to find, if you will. And that I have found to be kind of the number one instrument to getting buy-in, to getting people to agree, and to do this, to actually put an initiative in place and to see it succeed. So that's how I always start. And if people were like, Jordan, show me your program, I'd be like, no, first we have to do this, because I can show you the program, but if you don't know why you need that program, there's no point in showing to it. So yeah, we always start with that awareness and why.
Yeah, I like that point, because what was going through my head is I thought you were going to say, yeah, we sit down and we have a PowerPoint and we go through the PowerPoint and it shows them all of the reasons, right? I quote my statistics and what research we've done in the field. But really, what you're doing is saying, let's try to get everybody on the same page of what we're even thinking about. And I imagine it's possible people go through that and they go, oh, that's what that is? We don't want to do that. Now, I don't know if that happens.
Yeah.
But no, it's probably better if it does.
Yeah, very rarely. I could think of pretty much one company, and I've quite literally delivered hundreds and hundreds of these workshops and these discussions. And someone did ask, and I will say this, what is data literacy? Data literacy, broadly defined, is the ability to read, work with, analyze, and communicate with data. It's basically getting everyone empowered with data. And I could tie that to what that point of having the naysayers, those who say we don't need this. I've had one company out of hundreds and hundreds of workshops, one who said, oh, my workforce is already there. Having listened to that person and held that discussion with them, their workforce is not there. But they were very stuck in the old way of doing things, thinking that they were already there. It will come back to bite them, because we've conducted enough studies. We've seen it. I travel the world and I speak to companies all over the world. No one's workforce is fully data literate. And COVID-19, this is an interesting point. When everything was shut down, companies tried to be more data driven, and they found out very quickly they were not there. And so data literacy is the empowerment of individuals to be able to do that. And I've had one company out of all of them that basically said, we're good. And no, they're not, but that's okay. I mean, they'll find out the hard way, and that's just sometimes how you have to do it, right?
So when they come back, you charge them twice as much.
Absolutely. No, I'm just kidding. So here's a prime example of that coming back story. And this actually comes from my career. So I've been with Qlik now for over 4 years. About 6 years ago was my first ideas around data literacy when I worked for American Express. And I presented it to them. I told them what I thought would be a good idea. This is what we should do. Instead of just teaching them where and how to use a dashboard, can we teach them how to use data? I was flat told no. I was told no, they're not ready for that, maybe in the future. And then they tried and change my job. Qlik hired me to basically be an entrepreneur and build data literacy. And guess who came calling last year for data literacy help? American Express. So it's one of those that I get why they're hesitant. They're so used to doing things the old way, which is what American Express was also doing. But in the end, you'll realize, oh, my workforce is not ready to use data. So then I work with them to get them there.
Yeah, I can see that. So actually, I have lots of other questions I'd love to ask you about this, but you gave me the perfect segue into the next thing I want to talk about. So I'm just going to go right into that. So this has been, so far this is good, touching on data literacy, and I'm glad you gave us your definition, because I wanted to make sure that you threw that out, because I think it can mean lots of different things to different people. So it helps to know how you think about it. So now when it comes to data literacy, and this is, what you were kind of just talking about, a lot of what a company needs to work on is the data culture, or just, you could just say culture, period. And kind of even the example you just gave. Now, the problem, as with American Express, is people like the status quo, right? And so people changing themselves, changing culture, it's much harder than, say, just getting the technology stack in place, right? The technology stuff, while it's work, it can be pretty straightforward. So can you think of a time other than Amex when and you had to push past your comfort zone, or how to help a client get past their comfort zone, and what was so hard about it? And do you think it was more about personal, or more about the way the workplace was, or maybe it could be both?
This is a great question. Yeah, I've got a million answers to this, because I get asked often, what is the number one roadblock for data and analytics success? It has nothing to do with tools, and it has nothing to do with the data. It is culture and people. This is why data literacy resonates so much with companies. So when you say, I have hundreds of companies, pretty much most, if not all, the companies I work with. The problem is culture and people not wanting to buy in, and they struggle with it. So here there is some companies. I've got one, which is one of the largest federal contractors in the U.S. and in the world. This company has a lot of assembly line workers. And right from the get-go, when we were talking about strategy, they're like, we need to create a data literacy 101. These are not these frontline or assembly line workers. They're not building analyses. They're not building models, but the way they do their job affects the lineage of the data down the road. And so we had to create a way to teach people how to understand that what you do impacts data. That's culture. That's learning. That's understanding. It's not building some great statistical model. And so, kind of to your point, everywhere you go, one of the prime examples of this, and apologies to anybody on this who works in the financial services field, but that's where I came from. Financial services is one of the worst, what I would say, quote unquote, stuck in the old ways of doing things industries, because they feel like they're already good with data. But they're very good at the basics of data. They're good at descriptive analytics. They're not doing levels 2, 3, and 4. And so that's cultural. So there are plenty of banks or insurance companies I've worked with where the culture is the problem. It's not the sourcing of data, and it's not the tools. The tools get blamed all the time. It's the culture. It's the people. And when you run into that as often as I do, and as frequently as I do, you figure out strategies. And so you attack it differently. This is one reason you need leadership to fully buy in, not just agree with, not just say it's okay, but fully buy in. This is why I always start with awareness versus telling them you have to take training, because when you set that tone correctly at the beginning, much easier down the road. And the final thing I'd say to that, for the culture side and overcoming it, this is why you don't tell people, we're going to make you data scientists, or we're going to get you all these technical skills. They don't want that. They don't care. So what I teach is that we're just going to empower you. Let's empower you to use data better. Let's get you rolling with data in a more effective way, showing you how it can improve your job, not take over your job. And in doing those things, you can get over this culture problem. You can get over the issues that you run into. But it is a challenge, and that's why a lot of change management and things like that go into all this data literacy talk, because it's not just about learning skills about data. There is a whole shift, a whole transformation that takes place. Not that you're taking over jobs, not that you're changing jobs, but that you're empowering people in their jobs. And I think that sort of message and story resonates a lot better than saying, let's change everything that you do.
So that's interesting. And if I was to reframe what you said, you're talking about how do you address data as part of how people work on a day-to-day basis, right? Today, your job looks like this, and what we need to do is figure out, now that we're going to insert more data into that, what work you do, what is that? And it's not necessarily giving you any particular tools. It might be, maybe you need some training or access to something, right? But it's less about saying, now you have to build dashboards, or now you have to learn algorithms, or whatever that is.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think far too often people think that data and analytics, that technical side of things, is there to overtake their job or change their job. The way I describe it, think about a person building a house. They're given a hammer, nails, 2x4s, screwdrivers, saws, many different tools to accomplish the end goal, which is building the house. So when you think about a person in their job, they're given many different tools, learnings, policies, procedures, Microsoft Outlook, PowerPoint, webinars, and data should just be another tool basically in their tool belt to accomplish their job, their end goal. That to me is what data and analytics is. But too often it's seen as, oh, you're changing my job into a data job. No. We're changing, not changing your job, we're empowering your job with data. And I think that resonates with people who are not as nerdy as me, right? It resonates with people that data is not at the forefront of their mind. So we have to open up their minds to see where that power comes from, how this actually can help.
So when people kind of react that way, and I think that's pretty common, and they kind of get scared of those kind of ideas, oh, some computer algorithm is going to take over my job. How do you help them get past that?
Yeah, so there's kind of the naysayers or the doubters. And one little trick that I use, and this is an interesting one, and then I could go into more practical steps, but one trick that I think can be very helpful is, far too often, again, people think of data and analytics as technical. They don't see where their personal experience comes into play as much. They think that data is there to take over versus data should be combined with the personal experience. So if you have the naysayers and the doubters, find those who are not comfortable with data but have really good experience in this area that you're studying with data, and get them involved in the project, but not in a data perspective. And so then they can see how their experience is combining with the data. And I think that empowers them to say, oh, okay, this is not just going to be tool specific. But then I do feel this is why data literacy is so important. For those that are naysayers and doubters, I think that helping them to actually see, this goes back to the awareness side and the culture side, helping them to actually see the impact the data can have in a positive light, and then to also just give them a few more skills with data is a good thing. The final thing I'll say about this is have outcomes and solutions, examples of outcomes and solutions where data was successful and it helped people. If you could show them that, then you're like, oh, see, but again, don't only let it be data in the technical, let it be data, the technical, plus the human element, which I call data literacy, the human element of data. So doing those things, the naysayers can basically go a little bit off. They could be out there, right? The naysayers can have issues, but you know what? You're helping to overcome them. You're helping the culture to succeed with it, and I think that's really what can help.
Actually, I like that. That's a really interesting way to think about it too, because a lot of the proof that people might try to go for is, well, look at this. If we have the data, it can help us have better ROI or whatever you want to say, right? And they focus more on and that maybe not be technical, but it's the data and kind of how you're processing it, right? Not
100%.
Right, adding in the piece of, well, how did you get to the ROI is based on your experience, right? You have to understand from a business standpoint all of the aspects of how ROI is affected, or whatever the case may be. But I think a lot of people just go straight to the numbers.
Yeah, and I think if you could show them the positivity and the positive outcomes that happen, that matters.
Yeah, I think that's a good lesson to think about. And again, just keeping that human aspect in mind. I think we're all going to learn to think like that, as we get more comfortable with it too, and keep pushing these ideas. So this is, I think actually this last question will kind of tie it all up. So this is good. So now for folks that are listening, if you follow Jordan on social media, he likes to climb mountains. He's always posting some selfie on top of a mountain. Look what I did. No, it's actually pretty cool that he lives out in Utah and can do that. We're pretty flat here in New Jersey. And some of his shots are beautiful. Now, so Jordan, imagine one day you're on a climb and you find a cave. I'm sure you've seen caves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what's in those caves, but this time you decide to go in. And on the wall, you find ancient writings. And amazingly, they reveal the secret to being successful in analytics. What's written on the wall?
Oh, man. Oh, well, that is a loaded question. To me, I come at this in a very different way. A lot of people would come at this from a technical spot, a data quality spot. Nope. The key thing for success in analytics to me is curiosity. That is the very number one thing I try and create in people, because what does curiosity do? It allows you to analyze things more. Every time you ask a question, I've got 5 kids. They ask questions all the time. Every time they ask
Is that how we get more curious? We have to have more children?
I don't know. That's the secret.
Sorry.
But I mean, think about every time they ask me a question, what are they doing? They're figuring things out. They're figuring out a question in their mind. So to me, the secret on the wall of the cave, it would say, be curious, ask questions, right? When you look at what people have done that have invented things, look at Elon Musk. He wanted an electric car. He was curious on how he could make one better. Now look at Tesla. Look at Steve Jobs. Look at all of these things. Curiosity is amazing. But for some reason, when we become adults, we just forget about asking questions. We get into our jobs, we get into our routines, and we settle. And that's right. I hate the term settle. So no one who's listening ever settle. But that's what they do. That's what they do. They settle for what is in front of them versus being curious. So when something is presented to you in a dashboard, ask questions of it. Ask why. When a CEO or an executive presents something in a town hall, don't just go with it. Someone just said, doesn't curiosity kill the cat? One of my favorite sayings is, they say curiosity killed the cat, and I say curiosity spurs on analytics. And so it's this ability to ask questions. And if you could do that, right, I'm curious, how do I get better at Python or R or SQL coding? I'm curious, how do I build a better dashboard in Qlik or Tableau? I'm curious, why did the model or the analysis say this? Curiosity to me is the answer. That's where you start. That's where you go. I don't care how good you are at data and analytics. If you don't know how to be curious and ask good questions, then those data analytical skills are out the door. They don't make a difference.
So let's figure out how do we take that another step? So let's say you come across people who aren't curious, but should be. How do you help people, right? Especially if this is a critical element of what you're saying to be successful, not necessarily, in analytics, but let's just say in using data, what have you. How do you help people get over that? Because I think curiosity, one, is like asking the questions, but you also made the point like, well, when the CEO says this, be curious, and a lot of people like, that we can't do that, right? So there's that, almost going back to that comfort zone question, like people have to be able to, be uncomfortable with some new things it might raise, but also just this idea of curiosity. How do you get people to think that way if that's not something that they're, might not be that everybody can just be curious?
Do they know why they need to be curious? I mean, to me, everything you just mentioned, do they know why they should be challenging the CEO's data? Do they know why they should be curious? Do they know why other things? The reality is that I think that's a good question, and a point just came in that within curiosity, some people find it rude. That is based on, I agree, cultural things where and the norms that have been set up in our lives, right? That you don't ask questions. No, you should be asking questions. Look at COVID-19. Some of the best answers and solutions and things that have come out of any of this have become because people have asked questions. So it's a very I always start with, this is why, going back to the beginning of our conversations, I start with an awareness campaign to everybody who will be involved with data literacy. Do they actually know why? Teach them to that answer. Teach them to know why it matters. And if they know why it matters and they don't do it, that's on them. That's to their detriment, and that's on them. But if I were just to go to companies and say, go be curious and ask questions, and they don't know why, that's in my workshop, that my workshops are about 45, 60 minutes long. The initial one, I get to curiosity at about minute 40, minute 45, because the whole first half was basically why and what. And then you get to how. I think that right there is the key. If you could get to why it matters and teach people that correctly, then you can jump into the next phase. And you're going to have naysayers, you're going to have doubters, and you're not going to get everybody. But I have found quite easily, out of the hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people I've taught this to, I'd say 95 to 99% of them are on board and they're willing to go forward with it. Of course, I'm going to have the naysayers, and that's fine. You're not going to get perfect, but start with why. If you can start with that and teach that, then you can easily be like, okay, now go ask questions. And of course, then there's the whole system of getting over your fear of asking a question, because how many people want to go question their CEO? I'll do it for you. So it's a matter of, at that point, once they know the why, you build your roadmap, you build your strategy, and you build your goals and plans, and you can easily fit it all.
That's what I was just kind of coming to that last point of, if they believe in it, and they're willing to move in that direction, are there any tips you can leave with people about how, like maybe ways you found to effectively ask questions, right? Because there's probably different ways that you could say the same thing, and some are going to be, whether it's rude, or some will be seen as challenging, and some will be seen as very thoughtful, even though you're trying to go the same way. So how can we make sure to ask questions in a way that is productive, I guess?
In the short amount, I don't have a lot of time now. So what I would actually say is have people connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a whole system on this, a whole process on this. One of the second question when I'm doing that workshop, that just to get people's minds, it's a rhetorical question, I don't look for answers, that I ask people is, are you comfortable asking questions of data? Do you actually know how to ask a question of data? Because most of the time, of course, the answer is no. And so we now know where we're starting. Let's make sure we get you to understand why what I'm going to teach you is important. Then we jump into it. So I have a whole framework on it. I've got some books to read on it and things like that.
Oh, great.
But the number one thing I would say, and I can make it clear and not ambiguous. Within data and analytics, if you make things ambiguous, then you might not be pulling the right data. You might think you have an answer when you don't. But clear and unambiguous and specificity, those things matter so much in data and analytical questions. But like I said, reach out to me. I can share a lot of info on these topics.
Great. Yeah, we'll get that and put it into the follow-up with this.
Perfect.
Great. All right. So that brings us right to the end. So perfect timing. Jordan, thanks so much. I think we really got a lot of great ideas on how to start thinking about data literacy in our organizations, and some areas where we can focus on how to be successful and progress those strategies. So
thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And as always, good seeing you, my friend.
You too.
Okay. So long, everybody.